Hi everyone! In this video, I will talk about how to create the fine-tuning dataset that is used to train the base model further on a specific task in order to create an assistant. Let's see the details. As I said, this dataset is used to teach the base model to be good at a specific task. In our case, we want this dataset to teach the model to mimic the way a person talks. You remember the special tokens that I talked about briefly in the BPE video? We will use them in this part. The raw data looks like this. We have a back and forth conversation that we exported from WhatsApp. As an example, this data will be converted to this format. We start with the start of text token, and then we put the role, in this case user. We put the separator token, and after that we put the user message. And finally, to finish the turn, so this is the user turn, we add the end of text token. And we repeat the same thing, but this time for the other person that talks, that responds to the user's answer. We will consider this as the answer that the assistant should produce. We repeat the same process for the rest of conversation, and at the end we form our fine-tuning data. Here I want to highlight the user and assistant roles. So here, if you want to switch, let's say that the user is the other person that I'm talking to, and the assistant is me. So if I want the model to mimic how I talk, then I'll put all my answers in the assistant section. But if I want to mimic the other person that I'm talking to, then I'll put the answers for that person in this section. Something that you need to keep in mind is that this dataset does not need to be big like the pre-training dataset. So it means that you can generate high quality data manually, and this will help boost the base model to train very well. Let me show two examples of how to form the fine-tuning dataset. Here is the first, and let me show you the second one. So we have the two examples in front of us. Do you see a difference? In the first example, we have one message from the user and a reply from the assistant. And we consider this as a single example that the base model will be trained on. On the other hand, in the second case, we have multiple turns between the user and the assistant. So what's the difference? The difference is that in the first case, we have no context because we have just one message and a reply. And that reply, if we want the model to understand how to reply well, then it needs to know the context. And in the second example, we have a clear context because we keep the history of the conversation. But if you want to use the second example, make sure that when forming the dataset, that the input should always be less than the block size. This is where the block size comes into play. In the previous section where we trained the base model, we have fixed the block size to a specific value. So if you want to use the second approach, this will consume a lot of tokens in the input, so you could easily exceed the block size value. So keep that in mind when creating the dataset. And here I'm saying, think of showing the model multi-turn examples because this will help it a lot to understand how to reply to a user. In this series, I will use both approaches. I'll start with the first one because it's the simplest, and then we will evaluate the model to see if it will be able to reply to the user. It should be able to reply to common messages that are available in the fine-tuning dataset. But if you want to discuss with the model on topics that are not in the dataset, then we will have a problem. Also, if we want to have a coherent conversation with the model, that will not work. Then we will go to the second approach and see how this approach will solve those issues. Are you ready? Now let's code. Open the fifth notebook. It's called fine-tuning dataset. And here we will start by reading a conversation that we exported from WhatsApp or Signal or any other app. Here I added a dummy data just to show you what it contains. Let me show you. So basically it's a conversation between two people, and I generated this with ChatGPT. This is fake data. Let's see how we will use it. In that dataset we have, or in that conversation we have 75 lines. And the first thing we will do is to clean the conversation. We have done this in the first notebook. So here we are going to apply the same filters that we applied in that episode. So nothing new here. And after that, we will see how many lines we removed. In this case, we will not remove any line because this data is clean. In this section, we will see how to create the dataset. First, we need to group messages by sender. If I open the dummy data again, you can see that sometimes a person can send multiple messages sequentially. This is not ideal. So we need to concatenate those messages in order to have this structure. So as you can see before, we have user 1, user 2, user 2, and then we have user 1. What we would like to have is like this. We want to have user 1, user 2, user 1, user 2, etc. So in that case, we will just concatenate the strings or the messages and add a new line character between them. This is how it looks like. And this is exactly what we will achieve with this code. So remember, we had 75 lines after assembling those, or after grouping the messages by sender. Now we have only 65 entries in the data. So after doing this, now we need to convert the messages into this format. You can see that we start with the start of text token, then we put the sender, we add the separator token, we put the message that the person has sent, and finally we finish with the end of text token. And this is how we are doing this. So we are defining the special tokens, and then basically for each message entry, we are going to extract the sender and the message and form the input sequence. And finally, again, we will have 65 tokens, but this time, if I look at let's say the first entry, you can see that this is what we have. We have start of text token, the first person, the separator, and here you can see that we concatenated the two entries into just one. Here we have hey, we have this new line character and the second message, and we end the sequence with the end of text token. So after doing this, we are going to save the data in a JSON format so that we load it in the next notebook where we are going to train the model using this fine-tuning dataset. So make sure to run this, and let me do that. Let's open the data, and here is how it looks like. We are using JSON because it will be easier to parse than saving it as a text file. So that's it for this video. As I said, in the next one, we are going to start the fine-tuning process. I'm going to start without providing the model a context, and after that we will try to modify the dataset so that we provide the model with the context, and then we will compare the two approaches to see which one delivers a good assistant at the end. See you next time.